You have seen this shape your whole life and never asked why it holds. Push a square and it can rack. It folds sideways into a leaning frame because its angles are free to move. But push a triangle and something different happens. It does not bend into another version of itself. Its sides lock each other in place. To deform it, you have to stretch it, break it, or destroy one of its connections. Most people call that basic geometry, or call it the strongest shape, and move on. But that misses the deeper mechanic. The triangle is not just strong because of material. It is strong because of order. Its freedom has been constrained in a way that lets it carry weight. And that is the hidden law. Not mysticism, not decoration, not a motivational metaphor. A law about why some structures stand, why others collapse, and why the freedom you thought you gained by removing limits may be the exact thing bending you out of shape. By the end, you will not just understand why the triangle holds. You will be able to test where this same law is operating in your own life. Look at anything built to carry weight and survive, and you will find this shape repeated. The truss of a bridge, the skeleton of a tower, the arm of a crane, the frame of a bicycle. Triangles, again and again, hidden inside the things that have to hold. That is not an aesthetic choice. No engineer ever chose the triangle because it looked balanced or sacred or pleasing. They chose it because it works, and because the shapes that feel more open and more free do not. Here is where most explanations stop. People say the triangle is simply the strongest shape, nod, and move on. But that word, strong, is hiding the real reason. And the real reason is the entire point. Strength is about material. A thick enough bar of steel is strong. But build a square out of the same steel, with the same bars and the same joints, and it will still fail in a way a triangle never will. Not by snapping, by folding. The bars stay whole, the joints stay attached, and the whole structure quietly leans over and gives way. So the real question was never which shape is made of stronger stuff. They are the same stuff. The question is why one keeps its form and the other surrenders it. The answer is not strength at all. It is something far more exact. And once you can name it, you cannot unsee it in anything that stands or falls. Imagine both shapes built the same way. Straight bars for the sides, a simple pin at every corner so each joint can rotate freely. Nothing glued, nothing fixed solid, just bars and pins. Now count how each one can move. The square has a way out. Its 4 bars keep their exact length while the corners swing, and it folds sideways into a parallelogram without breaking a single piece. Engineers call this racking. The square has 1 degree of freedom, a single built-in way to deform while staying completely intact. Now try the triangle. Fix the length of 3 bars, and you have not just chosen 3 sides. You have locked all 3 angles. There is no way to move those corners without stretching a bar, snapping it, or tearing a joint apart. The triangle has 0 degrees of freedom. There is no exit built into its shape. That is the whole secret. The triangle does not hold because it is strong. It holds because it has nowhere to go, and this is not abstract. It is why a wooden gate has a diagonal board nailed across it, and why the back of a cheap bookshelf has a thin metal cross brace. Without that diagonal, the gate sags and the shelf leans. Add it, and each rectangle becomes 2 triangles, and the sagging stops. That single added bar is a constraint, and the constraint is what turns a collapsing frame into one that can carry weight. Sit with that. The thing that made the structure stable was not more freedom, it was less. A constraint, placed on purpose, is what let it hold. Now I have to be honest with you about what comes next, because you are sharp enough to catch it if I am not. A triangle holding a load is engineering. It is measurable. It can be proven. What I am about to do is carry that same principle over to your life, to your choices, to the structure of how you actually live. And a careful person should ask immediately, is that a real law or just a metaphor that sounds deep? So let me say plainly what this is. The triangle is not proof about your life. It is a model, a visible physical version of a pattern older traditions called correspondence. The idea that the same structural rule can show up at different scales, that the way a thing holds or collapses in steel can mirror the way it holds or collapses in a person. I am not going to tell you the universe is secretly built out of triangles or that ancient builders hid a message in geometry. I cannot prove that, so I will not pretend to. What I can do is show you the pattern, name the law it points to, and hand you a way to test it in your own life before you believe a single word of it. If it is real, you will find it in your own experience. If it is not, you will not. That is the deal. So here is the law the triangle is modeling. A structure holds in proportion to how its freedom is constrained. Remove the constraints that lock it, and you do not set it free. You give it a way to collapse. Now watch what happens when you apply that to a human being. For most of your life, you have probably been handed a simple story about freedom. That freedom is the removal of limits. Fewer rules, fewer obligations, fewer things holding you in place. The fewer the constraints, the freer you must be. So you acted on it. You dropped the routine that felt rigid. You let go of the commitment that felt heavy. You stopped answering to the standard that felt imposed. Each time, it felt like a bar coming off a cage. It felt like air. But look at what you were actually doing. In the language of the shape, every limit you removed was a constraint. And every constraint you removed added a degree of freedom, a new way for the structure to move. You were not strengthening your life. You were unbracing it. You were turning a triangle back into a square, and a square does not announce its failure. It does not snap. It racks. It leans slowly, while everything stays technically intact. The job is still there. The relationships are still there. Nothing has obviously broken, but the whole structure is tilting, and somewhere you can feel it tilting, and you do not know why. So you reach for an explanation. You call it bad luck. You call it other people. You call it a bad season, a world that will not cooperate. You blame the press coming down from above, but the press was always coming down. The press is just weight. It is life, pressure, time, consequence. And it never stops pressing. The triangle carried that same press without complaint. The only thing that changed was that you removed the constraints that let your structure carry it. The instability you have been calling random is not random. It is lawful. It is the exact, predictable result of unbracing your own life and calling it freedom. But if I stopped here, I would be lying to you in a different direction. The lesson is not. Constraints are good. Put the cage back on. Obey. That would be its own trap. And your instinct against it is correct. Here is the part that matters. Not all constraints are the same. Some are load-bearing. They are the ones you chose. They carry your weight. They hold up the structure of a life you actually want. Remove those, and you rack. But other constraints are parasitic. They do not hold your structure up. They hold someone else's structure up, and they use you as the material. They were imposed, not chosen. They serve a system, an authority, a habit, a fear, and they give you nothing back except the feeling of being held in place. Now look at what false freedom actually does, because this is the real inversion. When a person sets out to remove his limits, he almost never removes the parasitic ones. Those are hard. Those have power behind them. Those push back. So instead, he removes the load-bearing ones, the self-imposed routine, the personal standard, the chosen discipline, because those are the only constraints that obey him. He cuts the bars that were holding him up and keeps the cuff that was holding him down. And he calls that freedom. This is why you were right to distrust limits and still ended up less free. You were right that something was caging you. You just took the saw to the wrong members. So here is what self-ownership actually means. It is not the absence of all structure, that is collapse. And it is not living inside a structure someone else built around you, that is obedience. Self-ownership is choosing which constraints carry your weight and removing the ones that only carry someone else's. It is building your own triangle on purpose, instead of either tearing every bar off or letting another man weld them on. So here is your test. Not a feeling, not a reflection you forget by tomorrow. Something you can actually check. Take one part of your life that has been leaning, something unstable, something drifting, something you have quietly been calling bad luck. Now ask one question and answer it honestly. What constraint did you remove right before it started to lean? A routine you dropped, a standard you let slide, a commitment you walked away from because it felt like a limit. Find the bar you pulled. Then notice whether, when the leaning started, you blamed something other than the removal. Then do the harder part. Look at the constraints still on your life right now and sort them into two piles. Load-bearing, the ones that carry your weight, that hold up something you actually chose. Parasitic, the ones that hold you in place for someone else's benefit and give you nothing back. Be honest about which pile you have been cutting from. Most people spend years sawing through the load-bearing pile because it is the only one that lets them, while the parasitic pile sits exactly where it has always been. And then, finally, find your missing side. The one constraint that, if you chose it and set it back in place, would lock the leaning part of your life into something that can carry weight again. Not a limit imposed on you. A limit you select, because it holds the structure you actually want. That is the law the triangle was hiding. Order is not the enemy of freedom. The right constraint, chosen on purpose, is the only thing that lets anything stand under pressure. A bridge, a tower, a life. The press is always coming down. The only question is whether you have built something with no room left to collapse.